Katherine Miller's heart thundered in her chest as she urged the mare beneath her to gallop faster, dust billowing behind them like a storm cloud on the Colorado plains. The June morning sun had barely crested the mountain ridge, but she was already miles from the settlement of Silver Creek, and miles from the altar where Preston Rawlins would soon be waiting, with his cold eyes and colder heart. "Go, Penny!" Katherine whispered desperately, leaning forward as the wind tore at her hastily pinned hair. Tattered pieces of white lace from her wedding dress caught on the saddle horn, ripping free as she rode. "We can't let them catch us." She hadn't planned this escape, not really. Just hours ago, she'd been lying awake in her father's house, resigned to her fate. At 22, Katherine had run out of excuses to delay the marriage her father had arranged with the wealthy cattle baron. Preston was 39, widowed twice over, and the most powerful man in 3 counties. The wedding would save her father from financial ruin after years of failed mining ventures. The decision to flee had come like lightning as dawn broke. Katherine had dressed in her wedding gown because it was the only thing laid out, grabbed her mother's locket and what little money she had saved, and slipped to the stables where Penny waited. Now, the rolling hills of western Colorado stretched before her, the vastness both terrifying and exhilarating. Freedom tasted like dust and morning dew on her lips. She glanced back, half expecting to see riders on the horizon. Her father would be furious, mortified when she didn't appear. Preston would be. Katherine shuddered. His rage would be something altogether more dangerous. The narrow trail curved around a stand of cottonwood trees, and Katherine slowed Penny to navigate the bend. As they rounded the corner, she yanked the reins hard, the horse whinnying in protest as they skidded to a stop. A man stood in the middle of the path. Tall and broad-shouldered, he wore a weathered Stetson pulled low over his eyes, leather chaps over faded denim, a cotton shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. One hand rested casually on the revolver at his hip, while the other held the reins of a magnificent black stallion. Katherine's breath caught. Her hands trembled on the reins. The stranger pushed his hat back slightly, revealing eyes the color of a summer storm. His face was sun-bronzed and unshaven, a thin scar running along his jawline. He regarded her torn wedding dress, her wild hair, and the panic etched across her features. His lips curved into a slight smile. "Running from something, miss?" His deep voice carried across the space between them. "Please," Katherine's voice cracked. "I need to pass." The man tilted his head, studying her. "Wedding day jitters seem to have hit you something fierce. You don't understand? I understand more than you might think." He glanced back over his shoulder, as if sensing pursuers that hadn't yet appeared. Then he looked back at Katherine, decision made. He swung up onto his stallion in one fluid motion and guided the horse alongside hers. "Name's Noah Thornton," he said, extending his hand, "and I reckon you've got about 10 minutes before whoever you're running from comes around the bend back there." Katherine stared at his outstretched hand, her mind racing through impossible choices. Noah dropped his hand and nodded toward the mountains to the west. "I know these hills better than most. I can help you disappear." He paused, his eyes holding hers. "Ride with me." Those 3 words hung in the air between them, an offer and a promise all at once. In the distance, Katherine heard the thunder of approaching hooves. Her time had run out. "Ride with me," Noah said again, more urgently. Katherine took a deep breath and nodded. "Lead the way, Mr. Thornton." Noah's face broke into a genuine smile that transformed his rugged features. "Hold on tight," he said, spurring his horse forward. "And call me Noah. Something tells me we're about to become well acquainted." As they rode side by side up toward the mountain pass, Katherine knew she was trading one unknown future for another, but something about the steady presence of the cowboy beside her made her believe she might have chosen right. The sun climbed higher as they rode hard toward the western ridge. Noah set a grueling pace, pushing their mounts through narrow ravines and across shallow creek beds, doubling back occasionally to obscure their trail. Katherine's wedding dress had become a tattered mess, the once pristine fabric now torn and muddied beyond recognition. "We need to get you different clothes," Noah called over his shoulder as they climbed a rocky slope. "That dress is like waving a white flag to anyone searching within 10 miles. Katherine nodded, too breathless to respond. Her sheltered life as a miner's daughter had hardly prepared her for hours of hard riding. Every muscle in her body ached, but she refused to complain. Better this pain than a lifetime shackled to Preston Rawlins. By midday, they reached a small clearing nestled between towering pines. A modest cabin stood in the center, its log walls weathered but solid. "My hunting cabin," Noah explained, dismounting and tying his stallion to a hitching post. "No one knows about this place except me, and now you." He helped Katherine down, his hands steady around her waist. When her feet touched the ground, her legs buckled beneath her. Noah caught her before she fell, his arms strong and secure. "Sorry," she murmured, embarrassed by her weakness. "I'm not used to riding for so long." "You did well," he said simply, releasing her once she was steady. Most folks would have complained hours ago. Inside the cabin was Spartan but clean. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, a narrow bed pushed against another. A small table with 2 chairs sat near the only window, which overlooked the valley below. "It's not much," Noah said, watching her take in the space. "But it's safe." Katherine touched the rough-hewn table, overwhelmed by the enormity of what she'd done. "Why are you helping me?" she asked suddenly, turning to face him. "You don't know me." Noah removed his hat, revealing thick dark hair that fell across his forehead. He ran a hand through it, considering her question. "I know enough," he finally said. "No woman runs from her wedding day without good reason." "You could be harboring a criminal," she challenged, "or someone mad." A corner of his mouth lifted. "Are you? Either of those things?" "No." "Then we're fine." He crossed to a trunk at the foot of the bed and rummaged inside, pulling out a faded blue shirt and a pair of worn trousers. "These will be big on you, but they'll serve better than that dress. There's water in the barrel outside if you want to clean up. I'll see to the horses." He left without another word, giving her privacy she hadn't expected. Katherine stood in the middle of the cabin, clutching the borrowed clothes, wondering at the strange twist of fate that had placed Noah Thornton in her path. After washing away the worst of the dirt and changing into the oversized clothing, Katherine felt marginally more herself. She'd used a length of rope as a belt to keep the trousers from slipping off her hips and rolled the sleeves of the shirt up past her elbows. She'd also salvaged the few items she'd stuffed into the pockets of her wedding dress, her mother's silver locket, $47 in bills and coins, and a small knife her father had once given her for protection. When Noah returned, he paused in the doorway, his expression unreadable as he took in her transformation. "Better," he said finally, setting down a saddlebag. "Though I reckon that's the first time those clothes have looked so fine." Katherine felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Thank you for the loan. I'll find a way to repay your kindness." Noah shook his head. "No debt between us." He began unpacking provisions from the saddlebag: jerky, coffee, a small sack of beans. "I figure they'll be searching the main trails heading east toward Denver or south to Santa Fe. They won't expect you to have gone west into the high country." "How do you know which way I was planning to go?" "Just a guess. East is civilization. South leads to the railroads." He glanced up at her. "Am I wrong?" Katherine sank into one of the chairs. "No, I thought I might find work in Denver. I can read and write, keep accounts. My father taught me." "Your father?" Noah said carefully, setting coffee to boil in a small pot. "Is he the one you're running from?" "Not exactly." Katherine twisted her fingers in her lap. "My father arranged my marriage to Preston Rawlins." Noah's hands stilled. "Rawlins? The cattle baron? You know him?" "I know of him." Noah's voice had turned hard. "His reputation reaches far." Katherine swallowed. "Then you understand why I couldn't go through with it." Noah was quiet for a long moment, the only sound the coffee beginning to simmer over the small fire he'd built. "Rawlins isn't a man who takes kindly to being denied what he wants." "I know." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "He'll hunt for you." It wasn't a question. "Yes." Noah poured coffee into 2 battered tin cups and handed one to Katherine. "Then it's good you found me, Katherine Miller, because I know how to disappear." She looked up sharply. "How do you know my full name?" A shadow of a smile crossed his face. "The whole territory knows about Preston Rawlins marrying the Miller girl today. News travels." Katherine's shoulders slumped. "So everyone will know I ran." "By nightfall." Noah settled into the chair across from her. Which means we need a plan. You can stay here for a few days while the initial search dies down, but eventually we'll need to move on. We? Katherine questioned. You've done more than enough already. I can't ask you to— You didn't ask? He interrupted. I'm offering, unless you'd rather face the mountains alone. The thought sent a chill through her. Katherine had courage, but she wasn't foolish. She'd never survived the wilderness on her own, especially with Preston's men searching for her. Why would you do this for a stranger? She asked again, needing to understand. Noah's gray eyes darkened, and for a moment, Katherine glimpsed something haunted in their depths. Let's just say, I understand what it's like to need an escape. He sipped his coffee. Rest today, tomorrow. I'll teach you what you need to know to survive out here. That night, Katherine slept fitfully on a bedroll near the fireplace, while Noah took the narrow bed. Despite her exhaustion, her mind raced with images of Preston's anger, her father's disappointment, and the uncertain path that stretched before her. In her dreams, she was running through an endless forest, wedding dress snagging on branches, tearing away piece by piece until she was left with nothing but tatters. And always behind her, the sound of pursuit growing closer. She woke with a start before dawn, a scream caught in her throat. Noah was already up, silhouetted against the gray light filtering through the window. Bad dreams? He asked without turning. Katherine sat up, drawing her knees to her chest. How did you know? You were talking in your sleep. Now he turned, his expression softened by the dim light. You said, please don't, several times. Embarrassment washed over her. I'm sorry if I woke you. I was already awake. Noah moved away from the window and stoked the fire, adding small logs to bring the embers back to life. I sleep light out here, habit. As the flames grew, Katherine studied Noah more carefully than she'd been able to the day before. He moved with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin, but there was wariness in his posture too, the alertness of someone who'd learned to watch his back. You're not just a hunter, are you? She asked suddenly. Noah's hands paused for just a heartbeat before continuing their work. What makes you say that? The way you move, the gun you wear. She hesitated. The way you know how to disappear. A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackling of the fire. I was a lot of things, he finally said. Cowhand, guide, scout for the army for a time. He poured water into the coffee pot. Does it matter? I suppose not, Katherine replied. Not as long as you're not running from the law. Noah's laugh was sudden and genuine. No, Miss Miller, I'm not wanted by any sheriff or marshal, if that's your concern. Something in his voice made Katherine believe him, though she sensed there was much more to his story than he was sharing. As promised, Noah spent the day teaching Katherine wilderness skills, how to move quietly through the forest, how to tell direction without a compass, which plants were safe to eat, and how to build a fire that produced minimal smoke. You're a quick study, he commented as she successfully identified several edible berries. Most city folks take longer to learn. I'm not exactly from the city, Katherine corrected. Silver Creek is hardly more than a few streets, and my father took me along on some of his prospecting trips when I was younger, before he decided I needed to be a proper lady. Noah raised an eyebrow. Proper ladies don't typically flee their weddings. For the first time since her escape, Katherine smiled. I suppose I failed at that particular lesson. By late afternoon, Noah had taught her basic shooting with his spare revolver. Her aim was terrible, but he assured her she'd improve with practice. The most important thing is that you're not afraid of the weapon, he said as she reloaded clumsily. Fear makes people hesitate when they shouldn't, or shoot when they shouldn't. Katherine nodded, concentrating on the revolver in her hands. Like marriage, she murmured absently. Noah gave her a curious look. How's that? She hadn't meant to speak aloud, but now that she had, the parallel seemed obvious. Fear makes people marry when they shouldn't, out of desperation or obligation, or it prevents them from marrying when they should, out of worry that it won't last. Speaking from experience, Noah asked, his tone carefully neutral. Katherine handed the revolver back to him. My mother died when I was 16. She married my father for love, against her family's wishes. They disowned her. She stared out at the surrounding pines. When she was dying, she made me promise I wouldn't make the same mistake, that I'd make a practical match. And Rawlins was practical. He was wealthy, powerful, and wanted to marry me. My father's minds have been failing for years. She shrugged. It seemed like the sensible choice until, Noah prompted when she trailed off. Catherine's hands trembled slightly as memories surfaced. 3 weeks ago, I overheard Preston talking with his foreman. They didn't know I was nearby. He said, she swallowed hard. He said his last wife had been too fragile, too opinionated, that he'd make sure I was properly broken in from the start. Noah's expression darkened. Sounds like Rawlins. You've had dealings with him before, Katherine said, not a question this time. Noah holstered his weapon, his movements deliberate. 5 years ago, I worked his cattle drive, saw him beat a young ranch hand nearly to death for losing 3 head to rustlers. His jaw tightened. The boy couldn't have been more than 17. Preston would have killed him if some of us hadn't stepped in. What happened? We got fired. The boy lived barely. Noah's eyes met hers. After that, I made it my business to stay clear of Preston Rawlins and his kind. Yet here you are, helping his runaway bride? Katherine smiled sadly. Putting yourself right back in his path. Noah's expression softened. Some things are worth the risk. In that moment, with the late afternoon sun gilding his features and sincerity in his eyes, Katherine felt something shift inside her, a warmth that had nothing to do with the summer heat and everything to do with the man standing before her. Before she could respond, a twig snapped in the distance. Noah whirled, hand on his gun, pushing Katherine behind him in one swift motion. Inside, he whispered urgently. Now! Heart pounding, Katherine slipped through the cabin door. Noah followed, closing it silently behind them. He moved to the window, keeping to the side to peer out without being seen. Riders, he murmured, 3 of them coming up from the south trail. Preston's men? Katherine's throat constricted with fear. Can't tell yet. Noah grabbed his rifle from beside the door. Stay low and quiet. The minutes stretched like hours as they waited, the only sound their controlled breathing and the distant hoofbeats growing steadily closer. Katherine crouched beside the bed, Noah's spare revolver clutched in her trembling hands. The riders came into view through the window, 3 men on horseback, moving slowly, scanning the terrain. They wore no distinctive clothing that marked them as Rawlins's men, but the purposeful way they searched the area left little doubt about their mission. They're looking for something, Noah whispered. Or someone. One of the men pointed toward the cabin, and the trio changed direction, heading straight for them. They've spotted the cabin, Noah said grimly. There's a cellar trapdoor under that bearskin rug. Get in there and don't make a sound, no matter what you hear. What about you? Katherine whispered frantically. I'll handle this. He helped her lift the heavy rug, revealing a small wooden door set into the floor. Go on, quickly. Katherine hesitated, unwilling to leave him to face 3 men alone. Noah met her eyes, his gaze steady and reassuring. Trust me, he said simply. Something in his voice convinced her. Katherine descended the narrow ladder into the dark cellar, and Noah closed the trapdoor above her, replacing the rug. In the musty darkness, Katherine strained to hear what was happening. The cellar was small, barely big enough for a person to stand upright, with shelves of preserved foods and supplies lining the walls. She found a position where she could see through a thin crack between the floorboards above. She heard the riders approach, the creak of saddle leather as they dismounted. "Hello, the cabin!" a gruff voice called out. Heavy boots thumped on the porch, and then the door opened. Katherine could see Noah's boots as he stood in the doorway, rifle held casually, but ready. "Afternoon, gentlemen." Noah's voice was calm, unhurried. "Something I can help you with?" "Maybe," the lead rider said. "We're looking for a woman. Runaway bride, actually. Thought she might have passed this way." "A bride?" Noah sounded amused. "Out here? Can't say I've seen anything like that. Just bears and mountain lions lately." "This would have been yesterday morning. Young woman, dark hair, riding a chestnut mare, wearing a wedding dress or what's left of it." "Sounds memorable," Noah replied. "But I've been holed up here for 3 days hunting. Haven't seen anyone." There was a pause, and Katherine could sense the men's suspicion. "Mind if we look around?" the voice asked, not really a question. Actually, I do mind, Noah said, his tone hardening slightly. This is private property. We're riding for Preston Rawlins, another voice interjected. He's offering a handsome reward for information about his bride. That's so? Noah shifted his stance. Well, if I see her, I'll be sure to let Rawlins know. For now, you boys best be on your way. Daylight's wasting, and these mountains get dangerous after dark. The tension in the air was palpable even through the floorboards. You seem mighty eager to get rid of us, mister, the first man said. Makes a person wonder what or who you might be hiding. I'm not hiding anything except my patience, which is running thin, Noah replied. Now, I've been polite, but I won't ask again. Move on. Katherine held her breath, certain a fight was about to erupt. Her fingers tightened around the revolver. After what seemed an eternity, the lead man spoke again. We'll go, but Rawlins has men all over these mountains. If you're lying... I've said my piece, Noah cut him off. Good day, gentlemen. Heavy footsteps retreated, followed by the sounds of men mounting horses. Katherine didn't move, didn't breathe, until the hoofbeats faded into the distance. Even then she waited, unsure if it was truly safe. Finally the trapdoor lifted, and Noah's face appeared above her. They're gone, he said, extending his hand to help her up. For now. Katherine took his hand and climbed out of the cellar on shaky legs. Will they come back? Noah nodded grimly. Eventually. They didn't believe me. We need to move on sooner than I'd planned. Where will we go? Katherine asked. Suddenly aware that she was still holding Noah's hand, she released it quickly, brushing dust from her borrowed clothes. There's an old mining settlement 2 days' ride north of here. Friend of mine lives there, James Cooper. He's trustworthy, and the place is remote enough that Rawlins' men won't think to look there. A mining settlement? Katherine frowned. Won't there be other people who might recognize me? It's mostly abandoned now. The silver played out 3 years back. Just a handful of folks left who prefer to keep to themselves. Noah began gathering essentials into his saddlebags. We'll leave at first light tomorrow. For now, we should stay inside, keep the fire low. No sense making it easy for anyone else who might be searching nearby. That night, they ate a cold supper of jerky and hardtack, speaking little. Katherine could sense Noah's tension in the set of his shoulders, the vigilant way he kept checking the window. I'm sorry, she said finally, breaking the silence. I've brought trouble to your door. Noah looked at her across the small table. You didn't ask those men to come looking? No, but I chose to run. I chose to come with you when you offered. Katherine twisted her mother's locket between her fingers. I've been thinking about choices a lot these past days. Having regrets, his voice was carefully neutral. About leaving Preston? Not for a moment. She met his gaze steadily. About endangering you? Yes. Noah's expression softened. Katherine, I made my choice too. I saw you on that trail, wedding dress torn, looking over your shoulder like the devil himself was chasing you. I could have ridden on, minded my own business. He shook his head slightly. But that's not who I am. Who are you, Noah Thornton? Katherine asked quietly. Really? He was silent for so long, she thought he might not answer. I was a rancher once, he finally said. Had a small spread north of here. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Built it from scratch after years of working other men's land. His eyes took on a faraway look. Had a wife, Sarah. Katherine's heart constricted at the pain evident in his voice. What happened? Influenza, 3 winters ago. His words came slowly, as if each one had to be dredged up from somewhere deep. Swept through the area, took Sarah and our unborn child. After that, the ranch didn't matter much anymore. I'm so sorry, Katherine whispered, fighting the urge to reach for his hand. Noah's smile was sad but genuine. It was a long time ago. I sold the ranch, took to guiding hunters, trapping, doing odd jobs. Moving around suited me better than staying in one place with all those memories. And now, Katherine asked, what will you do after I'm safely away? Something flickered in Noah's eyes, something warm and surprising. Let's worry about getting you safe first. Tomorrow's ride will be hard. He was right. They set out before dawn, taking a steep trail that wound ever higher into the mountains. Noah led them through terrain that seemed impassable, narrow ledges, dense forest, and rocky slopes that required dismounting and leading the horses carefully. By midday, Catherine's muscles screamed in protest, but she pressed on without complaint. The stakes were too high for weakness. Twice Noah spotted riders in the distance, and they hid among the rocks until the search parties passed. Preston's cast a wide net, Noah observed grimly as they watched three men ride through the valley below. He must want you back something fierce. It's not me he wants, Katherine said, her voice bitter. It's what I represent, a business arrangement, a possession. Noah studied her profile as she watched the riders disappear around a bend. A man like that doesn't deserve someone like you. Katherine turned to him, surprised by the vehemence in his tone. Their eyes met, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them, something that made her breath catch. The moment broke when Noah's stallion snorted and stamped impatiently. We should keep moving, he said, turning away first. Still a long way to go before nightfall. They made camp that evening in a small cave high on a windswept ridge. The opening was narrow enough to be hidden by the surrounding vegetation. But the interior opened wider, providing enough space for them and a small fire. It's one of my hunting spots, Noah explained as he arranged stones for a fire pit. The smoke vents through cracks in the ceiling without being visible from outside. Katherine gathered branches for the fire, amazed at how much more capable she felt after just 2 days with Noah. Already she moved more quietly, observed her surroundings more carefully, thought ahead about what they might need. As darkness fell and they huddled near the small fire, the mountain air grew bitterly cold despite the summer season. Katherine shivered in Noah's oversized clothes. Without comment, Noah removed his coat and draped it around her shoulders. The leather was warm from his body, carrying his scent, pine and smoke, and something uniquely him. Thank you, she murmured, pulling it closer. Can't have you freezing, he said simply, poking at the fire. Tomorrow we'll reach Cooper's place. He might have more suitable clothes for you. I don't mind these, Katherine said, surprising herself with the truth of it. They're practical, much better than corsets and petticoats for running from determined grooms. Noah's laugh echoed softly in the cave. You're not what I expected, Katherine Miller. What did you expect? When I saw you on that trail? A frightened society girl who had had a moment of panic before her wedding. Someone who'd be begging to return to civilization by nightfall. Katherine smiled ruefully. I might have been that girl once, before I heard Preston's true nature, before I realized what my life would become if I married him. Noah nodded thoughtfully. Hardship has a way of revealing who we really are beneath all the trappings. He glanced at her. You're stronger than you know? His words warmed her more than the fire or his coat. For most of her life, Katherine had been defined by others, her father's daughter, Preston's intended bride. Never had she been seen so clearly for herself. What will you do? Noah asked after a comfortable silence. After we reach Cooper's place and you're safe? Katherine had been pondering this question since her escape. I still think Denver might be my best option. I could find work as a shop girl, or perhaps as a teacher's assistant. I had some schooling. It's a big city, Noah observed. Easy to get lost in. That's the hope. She hesitated. What about you? Will you go back to your cabin? Noah stared into the flames. Not right away. Need to make sure Rawlins' men have moved on first. He glanced at her. Might head to Denver myself, eventually. Been a while since I've seen the city. Katherine felt her heart quicken at his words, though she tried to keep her expression neutral. It would be good to have a familiar face there, she said carefully. Noah's eyes met hers across the fire, and that unspoken something passed between them again, warmer this time, more certain. Yes, he agreed softly. It would. They reached James Cooper's settlement by mid-afternoon the next day. As Noah had described, it was largely abandoned, a handful of weathered buildings clinging to the mountainside, the collapsed entrance of a played-out mine visible above them. Cooper himself was a surprise, not the grizzled old miner Katherine had imagined, but a man perhaps 10 years Noah's senior, with intelligent eyes and a quiet manner. He welcomed them without question, offering hot food and clean beds in what had once been the settlement's small hotel. Any friend of Noah's is welcome here, he told Katherine as he showed her to a room that, while sparse, was clean and private. We don't get many visitors these days, and those we do get, we don't ask too many questions. Thank you, Katherine said sincerely. It's very kind of you to take us in." Cooper smiled. "Noah pulled my son from a mine collapse 3 years back. There's no kindness great enough to repay that." He nodded toward a chest at the foot of the bed. "My wife left some clothes behind when she moved to Denver with our boy last year. Help yourself to anything that fits." After he left, Katherine opened the chest to find several dresses, plain but serviceable, along with undergarments and a nightgown. The simple luxury of clean, properly fitting women's clothes brought unexpected tears to her eyes. She washed in the basin provided and changed into a blue calico dress that needed only minor adjustments to fit her smaller frame. For the first time since her flight, she felt almost human again, though she found herself missing the freedom of movement Noah's trousers had provided. When she emerged from her room, she found Noah and Cooper deep in conversation at a table in what had once been the hotel's dining room. Both men looked up as she entered, and Katherine couldn't help noticing how Noah's eyes widened slightly, how his gaze lingered. "Miss Miller," Cooper said warmly, standing. "You look much refreshed." "Katherine, please," she insisted, taking the seat Noah pulled out for her. "And yes, the opportunity to wash away days of trail dust feels like the greatest luxury imaginable." Cooper chuckled. "I remember feeling the same way after my first weeks in the mines. Never thought I'd be clean again." He poured coffee for her from a pot on the table. "Noah's been telling me of your situation in general terms only, of course." Katherine glanced at Noah, who gave her a reassuring nod. "James knows how to be discreet," he said, "and we need his help with the next part of the journey." "Journey?" Katherine looked between them. "I thought this was our destination." Cooper shook his head. "This place isn't secure enough for someone being pursued by Preston Rawlins. I've already heard rumors that he's offering $500 for information about his missing bride." Katherine blanched. $500? That's a fortune out here. Enough to turn even honest men dishonest, Noah agreed grimly. "Which is why we can't stay in one place too long. The stage comes through Riverbank, that's the town in the valley below, once a week," Cooper explained. "Head straight to Denver. It's your best chance of getting there quickly and safely." "When does it come next?" Katherine asked. 4 days from now." Cooper sipped his coffee. "You'll stay here until then, out of sight. I'll arrange passage for you both." Katherine's eyes darted to Noah. "Both of us?" Noah met her gaze steadily. "I told you I might head to Denver. Seems as good a time as any." Joy fluttered in Katherine's chest, though she tried to temper it with practicality. "Are you certain? You've already done so much, risked so much." "I'm certain," Noah said simply, and something in his voice silenced any further protests she might have made. Cooper looked between them with knowing eyes. "Well then, that's settled. For now, rest. You're safe here." Those 4 days in the abandoned mining settlement became some of the most peaceful of Katherine's life. Despite the need to remain vigilant, there was a freedom in being so removed from civilization, from expectations. During the days, she helped Cooper with small tasks around the settlement, learning more about life in the mountains. Noah often disappeared for hours, hunting or scouting the surrounding area for signs of pursuit. But in the evenings, they gathered in the hotel's small kitchen, sharing meals and stories. Katherine learned more about Noah's past, how he'd come west at 17, worked cattle drives and ranch jobs until he saved enough to buy his own land, how he'd met Sarah at a harvest dance and married her 3 months later. The pride in his voice when he spoke of the ranch they had built together was matched only by the lingering sadness when he mentioned her name. In turn, Katherine shared stories of her childhood in Silver Creek, her mother's gentle guidance, her father's dreams of striking it rich. She spoke of her mother's illness and death, how her father had changed afterward, becoming more desperate in his mining ventures, more determined to secure Katherine's future through a prestigious marriage. "He's not a bad man," she told Noah on their 3rd night as they sat on the hotel's small porch, watching the stars emerge. "Just afraid of failing, of leaving me without protection or provision." "Fear makes people do terrible things," Noah agreed, "but it doesn't excuse them." "No," Katherine said softly. "It doesn't." They sat in companionable silence for a while, the mountain air cool around them. "What are you afraid of, Noah?" Katherine asked finally. He considered the question seriously. Used to be afraid of losing everything I worked for. Then I lost it anyway, and found out I survived." He glanced at her, his expression open in a way she'd never seen before. "These days, I'm more afraid of never finding a reason to put down roots again." The vulnerability in his admission touched Katherine deeply. "And you? What are your fears?" Noah asked. Katherine looked up at the vast sky above them. "I'm afraid of trading one cage for another, of running from Preston only to find myself trapped by circumstance or necessity in Denver." She turned to face him. "I want to build a life that's truly mine, not one dictated by others." "You will," Noah said with such conviction that Katherine almost believed it possible. "You're not the same woman who fled her wedding. You're stronger now, wiser." "Because of you," Katherine said softly. Noah shook his head. "The strength was always there. You just needed the chance to find it." On their final night before leaving for Riverbank, a storm rolled in from the west, bringing driving rain and spectacular lightning that illuminated the mountains in brilliant flashes. Inside the hotel, gathered around a roaring fire in the old common room, the tempest only added to the sense of cocoon, like safety. Cooper had retired early, leaving Noah and Katherine alone with a bottle of whiskey and the crackling flames. Katherine had never been much of a drinker, but the small glass Noah poured her provided a pleasant warmth that matched the atmosphere. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked, watching Noah stare into the fire. "Your ranch, I mean, the life you built." Noah swirled the amber liquid in his glass. "Parts of it. The satisfaction of seeing something grow under your care, having a place that's truly yours." He took a small sip. "But a home is more than land and buildings. It's people," Katherine said softly. "Yes." His eyes met hers. "It's people." Thunder crashed outside, and Katherine jumped slightly. Noah smiled. "Not fond of storms?" he asked. "Actually, I've always loved them. The power, the drama." She laughed softly. "My father says it's because I was born during the biggest thunderstorm Silver Creek had seen in decades. According to him, I came into the world with a crash of thunder, and I've been drawn to wildness ever since." "That explains a few things," Noah said, his smile reaching his eyes in a way that made Katherine's heart race. "Such as? Such as why you'd rather flee into the wilderness with a stranger than marry the most powerful man in the territory." His expression grew more serious. "It was incredibly brave, what you did, and incredibly dangerous." "I didn't feel brave," Katherine admitted, "just desperate." "Sometimes they're the same thing." Another flash of lightning illuminated the room, followed almost instantly by a deafening thunderclap. The storm was directly overhead now, rain lashing against the windows with renewed fury. "It's like the heavens are marking our last night here," Katherine observed, "sending us off with nature's grandest display." "A fitting farewell," Noah agreed. He hesitated, then asked, "Are you ready? For tomorrow? For Denver?" Katherine considered the question carefully. "I'm nervous," she admitted. "But yes, I'm ready. Whatever comes, it has to be better than the life I was running from." Noah set his glass down and moved to sit beside her on the small sofa. "Katherine," he began, his voice low and serious, "I want you to know that when we reach Denver, you don't owe me anything. You'll be free to build whatever life you choose." Katherine felt a cold fear that had nothing to do with the storm. Do you plan to go your own way once we arrive?" "No," he said quickly. "That's not what I meant. He ran a hand through his hair, seeming uncharacteristically uncertain. "I don't want you to feel obligated to maintain any connection with me because of what's happened these past days." Relief flooded through her. "Noah Thornton," she said, finding courage in the storm's energy. "If you think I've come to care for you out of some sense of obligation or gratitude, then you haven't been paying attention." His eyes widened slightly. "Katherine, I care for you because of who you are," she continued, her heart pounding. "Your kindness, your strength, your honor, the way you look at me and see someone worth knowing, not just a means to an end." Noah's expression softened. Slowly, as if giving her time to pull away, he reached out to touch her cheek. His hand was rough from years of work, but his touch was infinitely gentle. "From the moment I saw you on that trail," he said quietly, Something told me my life was about to change. I just didn't know how completely. Katherine leaned into his touch, her eyes never leaving his. I was running away from something I didn't want, she whispered. I never expected to run towards something I might need. Noah's gaze dropped to her lips, a question in his eyes. Katherine answered by leaning forward slightly, giving permission. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, a meeting of two souls who had found each other against all odds. But as thunder crashed around them and rain pelted the windows, it deepened, becoming a promise, an affirmation, a beginning. When they finally parted, Noah rested his forehead against hers, his breathing uneven. Whatever happens in Denver, he said softly, know that I'll be there for as long as you want me. Katherine smiled, joy bubbling up inside her like a spring. That might be a very long time, Mr. Thornton. His answering smile was like sunrise after the darkest night. I'm counting on it, Miss Miller. The journey to Riverbank the next morning was uneventful, the storm having washed away all traces of their passage. Cooper led them down a little-used trail that emerged just behind the small town's stagecoach station. Wait here, he instructed, leaving them concealed in a stand of trees. I'll make sure the way is clear and get your tickets. As they waited, Noah kept watch while Katherine adjusted the plain bonnet Cooper had provided to help conceal her face. She wore one of Mrs. Cooper's dresses, altered as best she could in the limited time available. With her hair pinned severely back and the bonnet's brim pulled low, she looked like any farmer's wife traveling to the city. Nervous? Noah asked, noticing her fidgeting with the unfamiliar clothing. A little, she admitted. I keep expecting Preston's men to appear around every corner. Noah squeezed her hand reassuringly. Even if they're in town, they won't be looking for a respectable couple boarding the Denver stage. They're searching for a runaway bride and possibly a lone rider. A respectable couple, Katherine repeated, smiling slightly. Is that what we are? Noah's eyes twinkled. For now, at least, Cooper's arranged our tickets under the names Mr. and Mrs. Thomas. Best to keep playing the part until we're well away from here. Mrs. Thomas, Katherine tested the name, finding she didn't mind the sound of it or the implication nearly as much as she might have expected. Cooper returned shortly, looking satisfied. All clear. The stage arrives in 20 minutes. 2 other passengers already waiting, an elderly gentleman and a traveling salesman, neither looking particularly interested in anyone else's business. He handed them 2 tickets and a small leather pouch. Your fares, plus a little extra for when you reach Denver, should help you get established. Noah tried to protest, but Cooper waved him off. Consider it payment for all the game you've provided over the years. Besides, I've no use for much money up here. They said their goodbyes quickly, Cooper embracing Noah like a brother before tipping his hat respectfully to Katherine. You've found a good man, he told her quietly. And he's found his match in you. Touched by his words, Katherine impulsively kissed the older man's weathered cheek. Thank you for everything, Mr. Cooper. James, he corrected with a smile. And it was my pleasure, Katherine Miller. May you find the happiness you deserve. The stagecoach arrived precisely on time, a cloud of dust announcing its approach before the conveyance itself appeared around the bend. As Cooper had reported, their fellow passengers paid them little mind the elderly gentleman, dozing almost immediately after they departed, the salesman engrossed in his catalog of wares. As Riverbank fell away behind them, Katherine felt a curious mixture of relief and apprehension. They had made it this far, escaped immediate danger, but Denver represented a new set of challenges, finding work, establishing new identities, staying alert for any sign that Preston had extended his search to the city. Noah seemed to sense her thoughts. He took her hand discreetly, his touch grounding her. One step at a time, he murmured, low enough that only she could hear. We'll figure it out together. The journey to Denver took 2 full days, with overnight stops at way stations along the route. At each stop, Noah remained vigilant, scanning for any sign of pursuit or recognition, but there was none. By the time the stagecoach rolled into Denver's bustling streets, Katherine had begun to believe they might truly have escaped. Denver in 1878 was a city in the midst of transformation, no longer the rough mining town of its early days, not yet the sophisticated metropolis it would become. Streets teemed with a diverse humanity, businessmen in fine suits, laborers in denim and flannel, ladies in fashionable dresses, and the occasional cowboy or prospector passing through. After securing modest accommodations at a boarding house run by a no-nonsense widow named Mrs. Holloway, Noah and Katherine spent their first few days exploring the city and establishing their new lives. Katherine found work more quickly than she expected, a position as assistant to the proprietor of a small bookshop on Larimer Street. Mr. Abernathy was an elderly gentleman whose failing eyesight made managing his inventory and accounts increasingly difficult. Katherine's literacy, neat handwriting, and quick mind impressed him immediately. "It's not much pay to start," he warned her, "but if you prove yourself, there's room for advancement." "It's perfect," Katherine assured him, delighted at the prospect of spending her days surrounded by books. Noah, meanwhile, found employment with a freighting company that transported goods between Denver and the surrounding settlements. His experience with horses, knowledge of the territory, and steady nature made him a valuable addition to their team. "It's honest work," he told Katherine over supper at a small cafe near their boarding house. "Pays well enough, and I'll be in the city more often than not." "And when you're not?" she asked, trying to hide her concern at the thought of him traveling the same roads Preston's men might be watching. Noah reached across the table to take her hand. "I'll be careful," he promised. "Besides, the more I learn about the routes in and out of Denver, the better prepared we'll be if we need to move quickly." They fell into a rhythm over the following weeks, working during the days, meeting in the evenings to share meals and stories of their experiences. On Sundays, they explored the city together, visiting parks and markets, slowly building a life that began to feel like it might last. They maintained separate rooms at the boarding house, Noah insisting on propriety despite the deepening of their feelings for one another. Their kisses, stolen in moments of privacy, grew more passionate, but Noah always pulled away before things progressed too far. "You deserve better than hurried moments and secrecy," he told her one evening as they walked along Cherry Creek, the setting sun painting the water gold and crimson. "When the time is right, when we're certain you're truly free, then we can think about a future together." Katherine appreciated his respect, even as she found herself increasingly impatient for that future to begin. The life they were building felt precious but precarious happiness balanced on the edge of constant vigilance. 6 weeks after their arrival in Denver, that vigilance proved warranted. Katherine was arranging a new shipment of books when the bell above the shop door jingled. Looking up with a practiced smile, she felt the blood drain from her face. Standing in the doorway was Elijah Barton, Preston Rawlins' foreman, the very man she'd overheard discussing her breaking in with Preston before her wedding day. She ducked her head immediately, turning away as if examining a shelf, praying he hadn't recognized her. Her hair was styled differently now. Her clothing plain but fashionable rather than the practical trousers or elaborate wedding gown he would associate with her. "Perhaps Miss Miller." Barton's gravelly voice shattered her hope of anonymity. "Well, I'll be damned. Mr. Rawlins said you might have headed to Denver, but I didn't believe we'd actually find you." Katherine straightened, knowing further pretense was useless. She forced herself to meet his gaze, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Mr. Barton, what a surprise." He smiled, the expression never reaching his cold eyes. "Not as much of a surprise as you're giving Mr. Rawlins, I'd wager." "He's been looking everywhere for his runaway bride." Barton glanced around the shop. "Quite a step down from being mistress of the Rawlins ranch, isn't it?" "I prefer it," Katherine said firmly, grateful that Mr. Abernathy was out on an errand. "Please give Mr. Rawlins my regrets, but I won't be returning." Barton stepped further into the shop, his bulk suddenly menacing in the confined space. "That's not how this works, Miss Miller. Mr. Rawlins wants you back, and what Mr. Rawlins wants, he gets." Katherine backed away, bumping into the counter behind her. "The law would disagree. We never married. I'm free to live as I choose." "The law," Barton sneered, "is whatever Preston Rawlins says it is in these parts." He moved closer. "Now, we can do this the easy way, with you coming along peacefully, or—" The shop door opened again, the bell's cheerful jingle a stark contrast to the tension inside. Noah stood in the doorway, his expression shifting from casual to dangerous in an instant, as he assessed the situation. "Everything all right, Katherine?" he asked, his voice deceptively calm. Barton turned, surprise registering on his face before it hardened into recognition. "Thornton, should have known you'd be mixed up in this." His hand moved toward the gun at his hip. "Always were too noble for your own good." "I wouldn't," Noah warned, his own hand hovering near his weapon. "Not in the middle of Denver in broad daylight. Too many witnesses, too many lawmen nearby." Barton hesitated, clearly calculating his options. "This isn't over," he finally said. "Mr. Rawlins is in the city. He'll be mighty interested to know we've found his bride and the man who helped her run." "Former bride," Katherine corrected, finding courage in Noah's presence. "And you can tell Preston that if he continues to pursue me, I'll make sure every newspaper from here to St. Louis knows exactly why I fled, including his plans for breaking me in." Barton's eyes narrowed, but uncertainty flickered in them. Scandal was the one thing a man like Preston Rawlins couldn't buy his way out of. "We'll see what Mr. Rawlins has to say about that," Barton muttered, backing toward the door. "This ain't finished." After he left, Katherine sagged against the counter, her knees weak with relief and delayed fear. Noah was at her side instantly, his arm steadying her. "Are you hurt?" he asked urgently. "No," she managed, though she trembled in his embrace. "Just shaken." "Noah, if they've found us—" "We need to leave," he finished grimly. "Immediately. Barton will go straight to Rawlins, and they'll be back with more men." He kissed her forehead quickly. "Pack only what you can carry. Meet me at the livery in 20 minutes. "But our jobs, our rooms, can be replaced," Noah said firmly. "You can't." Within the hour, they were riding hard out of Denver, heading southwest toward the mountains. Noah had purchased fresh horses, a sturdy gelding for himself, and a nimble mare for Katherine, along with provisions for several days. "Where are we going?" Katherine asked as the city fell away behind them. "I know a place," Noah replied, scanning the horizon for pursuers. "A valley in the San Juans, remote, fertile. I considered buying land there before I settled on my old ranch." He glanced at her. "It's a 3-day ride, maybe 4. Hard country to follow someone through." Katherine nodded, determination replacing her fear. She'd survived Preston's pursuit once before. She would do so again. Only this time, she wasn't the same frightened bride fleeing in a tattered wedding dress. This time, she had skills, confidence, and Noah at her side. They rode until dusk, making camp in a sheltered ravine that offered protection from both the elements and prying eyes. As Noah prepared a small fire, Katherine arranged their bedrolls nearby. "Do you think they'll follow us this far?" she asked, watching the flames cast dancing shadows across Noah's features. "Barton will," Noah said honestly. "He's a skilled tracker, but the further we get into the high country, the more the advantage shifts to us." He looked up at her. "I know these mountains, Katherine. They don't." Katherine nodded, drawing comfort from his confidence. "What happens when we reach this valley you spoke of?" Noah added another stick to the fire. "We start over, again." He hesitated. "If that's what you want." "What I want," Katherine said slowly, "is to stop running, to build something lasting." She met his eyes across the flames. "With you." Noah's expression softened. He moved around the fire to sit beside her, taking her hands in his. "That's what I want too," he admitted. "More than I've wanted anything since Sarah died." The honesty in his voice moved her deeply. Katherine leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. "Then we'll make it happen," she whispered. "Together." Noah lifted a hand to cup her cheek, his touch reverent. "Katherine Miller," he said softly, "when I saw you on that trail in your torn wedding dress, I never imagined you'd become the most important person in my life. And when you stood in the road and said, 'Ride with me,'" Katherine replied, "I never dreamed I was riding toward my future." Their kiss was a promise, a commitment more binding than any ceremony. When they finally parted, Noah kept her close, his arms a shelter more secure than any walls. "We should rest," he murmured against her hair. "Long ride tomorrow." But rest proved elusive for both of them. As the fire burned down to embers, they spoke of their hopes for this new beginning, a small homestead in the valley Noah described, perhaps a few cattle, a garden Katherine could tend. "I'd like to build the cabin near water," Noah said, his voice soft in the darkness. "A creek or spring, someplace that sounds like music when you're falling asleep at night. With a porch facing east, Katherine added, to catch the morning sun. And room to expand, Noah said, a question in his voice. For the future. Katherine's heart swelled at the implication. Yes, she whispered, room for the future, for family. They dozed eventually, still clothed, huddled close for warmth and comfort. When dawn broke, they were already awake, ready to continue their journey toward the life they'd envisioned in whispered conversations through the night. The next 3 days passed in a blur of hard riding, brief rests, and constant vigilance. Twice they spotted riders in the distance, though whether they were Rawlins men or simply travelers was impossible to tell. Each time, Noah led them on detours through terrain so rugged Katherine marveled at his ability to navigate it. On the afternoon of the 4th day, they crested a ridge, and Noah reined his horse to a stop. There, he said, pointing to the valley spread below them. That's it. Katherine gasped softly. The valley was like something from a dream, a broad expanse of green meadow bordered by pine forest, with a silver ribbon of creek winding through its center. Mountains rose on all sides, creating a natural fortress around the peaceful haven. It's beautiful, she breathed, unable to take her eyes off it. It's home, Noah said simply. If you want it to be. Katherine turned to him, her heart so full it might burst. I do, she said, the words carrying all the weight of a vow. They made their way down into the valley as the sun began its descent toward the western peaks. Near the creek, they found a small clearing among the pines that seemed perfect for a cabin. This is where we'll build, Noah decided, helping Katherine dismount. Good drainage, protected from the wind, close to water. Katherine walked the perimeter of the clearing, imagining walls, windows, a doorway. A home. Their home. How long do you think it will take, she asked, already mentally arranging furniture that didn't yet exist. To build something basic? A few weeks if I can get help from the nearest settlement. Noah approached her, taking her hands in his. But before we start building, there's something I need to ask you. Katherine's breath caught as he lowered himself to one knee before her, still holding her hands. Katherine Miller, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. I've loved you since the moment you chose to ride with me, though I didn't recognize it then. Each day since has only deepened that feeling. He paused, swallowing hard. I know we've talked about building a life together, but I want to make it official. Will you marry me? Be my wife, my partner, my home? Tears of joy spilled down Katherine's cheeks. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, Noah Thornton. Nothing would make me happier. He rose and pulled her into his arms, their kiss sealed with laughter and tears and promises for the future. As the sun set over their valley, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, they held each other, no longer a runaway bride and the cowboy who'd offered escape, but partners ready to build a new life together. In the months that followed, that life took shape around them. They traveled to the nearest town, a small settlement called Pinyon Springs, where they were married by the local preacher with 2 shopkeepers as witnesses. Noah purchased lumber and supplies, hired 2 young men to help with construction, and began building their cabin. Katherine, meanwhile, planted a garden, learned to hunt small game, and made regular trips to Pinyon Springs to trade and gather news. There was never any word of Preston Rawlins or his men in the area. Whether he had given up the search or simply hadn't found their trail, they couldn't be sure, but as weeks turned to months with no sign of pursuit, they gradually relaxed their vigilance. By the time snow began dusting the mountain peaks, the cabin was complete, a solid structure with 2 rooms, a stone fireplace, and the east-facing porch Katherine had dreamed of. Inside, they'd furnished it simply but comfortably, with items crafted by Noah or purchased on their trips to town. On the first truly cold night of autumn, they sat together on their new porch, wrapped in a quilt, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Are you happy?" Noah asked, his arm secure around her shoulders. Katherine leaned into his embrace, contentment warming her more thoroughly than the quilt. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she assured him. "Are you?" "More than I have words for," he replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Though I'd be even happier if you'd tell me what's been on your mind these past few days. You've seemed distracted. Katherine smiled, wondering if she should wait, if it was too soon. But the joy bubbling inside her was too great to contain. I've been thinking, she said carefully, that we might need to build that extra room sooner than we planned. Noah looked down at her, confusion giving way to understanding as her meaning registered. Katherine, he breathed, are you saying? She nodded, her smile widening. In the spring, we're going to have a baby. Noah. The wonder in his expression was everything she could have hoped for. He gathered her close, his joy evident in the trembling of his hands, the catch in his breath. A family, he whispered against her hair. Our family. As they held each other under the vast canopy of stars, Katherine thought back to that desperate morning when she'd fled her wedding, how lost and alone she'd felt, how terrified when she'd rounded that bend and found a stranger blocking her path. Ride with me, he'd said. 2 simple words that had changed everything. She'd been running away that day from Preston, from a future she couldn't bear. But, in truth, she'd been running towards something greater. Love, partnership, the freedom to build a life of her own choosing. Here in this valley, with Noah's arms around her and their child growing beneath her heart, Katherine Miller Thornton had finally stopped running. She was home.